Welcome to the Beyond Cinema studio presented by Celebs.com up here at Sundance. Shaul Schwarz. Firstly, congratulations on this crazy movie, Narco Cultura. For you, I mean, being a photographer and having this kind of world where I guess most of the time you're presenting something that's pretty quiet. You're presenting an image, people digesting it in a quiet kind of environment. To have this film that you've made, how does that kind of compare as an artist to have this kind of different form of creative expression?
It's a whole different. I mean, there's advantages from coming for stills and disadvantages.
Yeah.
Some advantages is the ability to photograph, the ability to go so deep with the access. But it's a complete different thing to have a film, to have authorship, to work with so many people, and to really be kind of able to put your message on it in a less minimalistic way than pictures. So, it's a great feeling to be here in Sundance with something so different.
Why did you want to tell this story in this way? Why did you think it needed? Because of the music, or?
Well, I think we like kind of saying, oh, it's a Mexican drug war, it's out there, it's far. And then I came to LA, and it was right there. And it influenced how people think everywhere here. And then you start thinking how it's really a cycle, how we have $50 billion industry that we're funding. People here do drugs. We're part of this.
Yeah.
So I felt like, and everybody was like, is it coming to the U.S.? Are bodies being dropped? Well, yeah, the bodies are still mainly there, but that doesn't complete it all. That doesn't mean we're not a part of it.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that people look at this, a little bit differently.
Right, and exactly like when you're going from like city to city across the country, showing these people kind of dancing and celebrating this music, the Narco Cultura music, which is like the insanity of the lyrics.
Right.
Obviously only matches the intensity of what's happening in places like Juarez.
Yeah, I spent 2 years as a still photographer in Juarez and didn't kind of stumble on the music till I came out to LA, and then I started touring, and my initial response was like, what? These lyrics, what is that? And then you kind of start to understand where they're coming from, why they're singing in those Robin Hoods, and then I started traveling the country, and I guess it's, in a weird way, it started making sense to me. I saw most of these kids coming out to the nightclubs, and I'm sure the high majority of them were just looking for a night out that they'd fit in. It just felt good, I think Latinos going out don't feel connected that much to rap or gangster rap or hip hop, and here's suddenly a new thing where they could kind of connect to their roots.
How did you feel though, as an outsider kind of coming into this space? Were you really, did it heighten your self-awareness that you weren't part of this culture?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I was not a part of the culture. When I first saw it, I was really angry, because you have to understand, I spent 2 years in Juarez and some other parts of Mexico really photographing the carnage, the sadness of this. And suddenly to see people, and it's so close, just partying away at it,
Yeah.
was shocking and angering. But, I kind of digested that and said, well, how did we get here? Why is this happening? And then I wasn't that angry. I just started to understand that we have this denial as a society. We like saying, oh, it's a drug war, it's far, it's this and that. But it made sense to me why we've gotten there, and that's why I made this film. I wanted Americans to see this. I wanted to show them that this is this new thing, and if we don't change some policies, we don't look at it, we can't really blame the young teenagers for thinking that way.
Yeah. Do these kids need a wake-up call? I know one of the Narco Cultura singers who had never been to Juarez is singing about all this stuff, is recording tunes for everybody, and he talks about wanting to go and hang out and be part of it. But do you think everyone kind of needs a wake-up call of having to see it at some point, or have it be kind of presented to them? Like, I mean, bodies being cut in 16
they would always come back and say, oh my God, you've been to Juarez, how'd you see, and it was kind of funny, because these guys were on the phone and pretending to be these big, tough.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think when they go down there, if they go down there, they're so already locked into what they do that I'm not sure it's a wake-up call or a look in the mirror whether this is wrong or right. It becomes more material to write new songs.
Yeah.
It's really what they want or connect. I always try to quietly push the singers and say, don't you think 17 million YouTube hits and a cutting heads off and AKs has some negative effect here?
Yeah.
But in the end, I think they look very little in the mirror in that sense. They find it as some pride. They make a living off it. There's a lot of money involved.
And you show them with their kids in the room too. It's like, it's generationally
I think it's a generation scared, and I think that's what I was trying to scream out.
Yeah.
And we're in a generation that you get a lot through regular media, but there's a lot of social media, and there's a lot of power in these things.
Yeah.
And it's a very aware community in that sense of knowing to get that message out there and blogging and circulating.
I can't remember which town it was in, but it was almost like everybody in the police force, that was in the
It was
police
right
force.
next to Juarez, actually. I know
Right,
you
like
remember this.
everyone had been killed.
Yes, and then a woman came in and she announced that she wouldn't, and of course she
Right.
was.
Exactly. So in terms of you and your own safety and your own like what kind of precautions did you take, and what kind of things did you feel directly? Did you ever feel directly at threat?
We did feel at threat. This was a hard movie to make. In the Juarez side, I knew both the journalists while we were filming, local journalists that got killed. We were getting a lot of help from local journalists, so that's an obvious, shock, because you always think they would know their way better a little bit.
Yeah.
We definitely kind of had to put ourselves deep in and start shooting very slow. And it was very hard. But a lot of the times we'd see or know amazing stuff, but you just can't act on it. It's just too much of a risk. We got tagged a couple of times. We got threatened. It was definitely a lot of in and out, and it was a mind game. It wasn't, as a photojournalist, I've been to Afghanistan, to Israel, different conflicts. But you kind of, you may get a lot of fire, a lot of shot. In Mexico, we always knew that we're not going to get caught in by mistake. We have to be careful not to anger someone to take us out.
Right.
And so it's this constant net, and you're being watched, you're being followed, and that's fine. We'd get to Juarez and say, okay, there was probably cartel people in the hotel at the checkpoints with the police that were hanging out. So, you try and repeat that same, actually very honest message of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm here to do a movie about the culture of the drug war. And try to be honest about that, but with that said, the journalistic, you want to get in there, so it was a challenging.
How different is a drug war zone as opposed to a war zone?
As a journalist covering it, that's exactly what's different, because you go in Afghanistan and you can take a lot of fire, but you trust the soldiers you with. You have your own team.
Right.
And it's true for many conflicts you cover. You have a team of photographers, and this was a little bit different. Again, in the mind game, we always were afraid of what we ask too much. What do we know on camera? What do we have? There wasn't many foreign journalists. It's a long-term kind of hustle. So being in there is very different than a bang-bang war. That seems very intense and is very scary, but to many degrees, this is actually more challenging journalism, to be able to meet traffickers, to make these connections, to take the time. And, these guys, Mexico is a very dangerous place for journalists. There's been over 30 journalists killed in the drug war, so.
And it's amazing how close geographically
we would walk from El Paso.
Yeah.
We would walk across, and we came from the safest city in the U.S. to the worst city in the world in a walk.
Yeah.
So it was a trip that way, and it was also our safeguard. We always, it seemed so far, but we were always let's make it to the bridge if we got scared, and that happened many times.
Yeah. When you were in Israel doing your service with the Israeli Air Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you a soldier, or were you strictly a photographer with the Air Force?
I was a soldier, but I was a photographer
Yeah.
serving. So it's funny, I did basic training and boot camp and stuff, but as a photographer in the Air Force, I didn't see that much conflict.
Yeah.
But I started my career in Israel right after the army, and I covered the end of the Intifada, and I've been going back to cover all that. So I think it kind of gave me an in, but I'd say my real soldier days came as a freelance photojournalist, in a sense.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time with different armies, including the Israeli, but less in the service, ironically.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's a complete transition. You chose it in a sense.
You do. You choose it. There's a movie here about
Tim Hetherington.
And Chris Hunders.
Right, and Tim, exactly. And we interviewed Tim and Sebastian here a couple of years ago, and Sebastian's coming in today as well.
Right, we're doing a panel together as well. I mean,
yeah,
this is friends, and this is you do get to some degree addicted to it. You do want to tell these stories, and you learn how to do this. I think with time, all of us start thinking, okay, how long more? How do I do maximum storytelling but not put myself again and again in that much danger.
Yeah.
And I love what I do, and I think, you know, I like bringing people to stories that they just won't know. And it doesn't always have to be a dangerous thing. If I bring you into a world that is crazy and is a cult and you don't know and it's not dangerous, that's still very fulfilling for me. But I think some of these stories, unfortunately, take that leap of we're going to immerse ourselves in the cartels of Mexico and slowly get the real deal.
It's been going for so long. Do you see an end to it? Or does it seem a little hopeless at this point?
It's hopeless.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's sad to say this because you want to fight. It's not a black and white question at the end. You want to fight for that gray.
Yeah.
But will it just be good? Is there a way to just fix it? No.
Yeah.
It is, you know, we have to change
It's the
major things
system.
for it to fix. There's just too many powers
Yeah.
in the cycle.
Well, the images you take are incredible, especially at the beginning of the film. I kind of felt like I was seeing some Gregory Crutzen type images where he's kind of, you know, almost should be a manufactured landscape, but unfortunately it's the truth of this particular place in the planet. So, but thanks for sharing it, and congratulations on having it up here at the festival too.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, mate.